Hey there, everybody. This is Stephanie Shea, Chief Astrologer for janspiller.com, here with Val D'Ambrosio. Of course, if you've been watching these series, you are getting to know Val. She's a guide, healer, coach who helps people, you'd say a personal rebirthing, right? And we have been teaming up for this series. It's been so much fun each month as the sun moves into a different sign. And there's different astrology happening each month. It really brings up certain themes. If you read my astrology, you know there are certain things to look out for. And it's so helpful to have a coach give some really practical tips of how she would help her clients navigate some of this stuff. So I'm going to run through the themes. There's a bit going on, but then we will talk with Valerie and get some helpful tips. So it's Capricorn season as of the solstice, which is on December the 20th this year, I believe. Depending where you live in the world, it could be the 21st with the time zones. But Capricorn is a powerful sign. It's a cardinal sign. It represents power, authority. A lot of people think of it associated with career, long-term plans, and commitment. When I think of Capricorn, I think of mastery, where most people with strong Capricorn in their chart can't just halfway do something. It's like, there's no shortcuts. They have to do the slow, steady work. So it's a quality over quantity. Maturity and wisdom is a beautiful Capricorn theme. A lot of people don't know that was originally the archetype of the grandmother went along with the sign of Capricorn. And I love that because when you think of grandmothers, they have so much wisdom and strength. And also Capricorn rules time and taking responsibility. So I always think of Capricorn, okay, that's ruled by the planet Saturn. When you have your Saturn returns, it's time to take more responsibility in your life. And there is quite a bit of astrology this month going on in the sign of Capricorn. The big headline is Venus retrograde in Capricorn. This happens December 19th through January 29th. Venus rules money and values, as well as relationships and our self-worth. With Venus retrograde in Capricorn, it's really all about determining our worth and if we're getting what we deserve, either in our love life or professionally, making peace with the past relationships. Exes can pop up. I hadn't even broached that with Valerie when we were talking about this the other day, but we may have to have some tips for that one. Making peace with aging, I thought, since there's kind of the crone grandmother archetype, loving yourself at all stages of life. So these are great things to work on during Venus retrograde in Capricorn. We will start out January with a new moon on January 2nd. In the sign of Capricorn, it's still a good time to set your intentions, but just realize it's not the time to take action. It's way better to put down the intentions of what you want, start researching it, and know that later in February, things will feel a lot more clear. Now, what makes January special is the second half is double retrogrades. January 14th to February 3rd is Mercury retrograde. It starts in Aquarius from January 14th to 24th. However, on January 25th, guess what? Capricorn. Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, January 25th to February 3rd. There's a huge emphasis on slowing down, considering what we value, what we're responsible for, as well as what is not our responsibility. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So that kind of leads me into some of what I would call the shadow or out of balance Capricorn traits, because as people know who follow the astrology I do, there's a whole spectrum, and every sign has beautiful highest operation that is possible that a lot of people are enacting, and then there's the times we're stressed, tired, just not feeling our best. That's when some of these shadow traits come out, and we can keep an eye on ourselves and try not to fall into those pitfalls. So if you think of out of balance Capricorn, feeling controlling or bossy, Okay. And I have Moon and Mars and Capricorn. So I'm going to speak a lot about this personally. Feeling overly responsible for everything and everyone. There can be a materialistic tendency or just like thinking you have to keep up a certain appearance. Being tunnel visioned about success. Sometimes the shadow Capricorn is success at all cost without considering other people. And also with me, I have Capricorn Moon, which is all about emotion. And I know a lot of other Capricorn Moon people who kind of feel they have to be the rock of Gibraltar and they can't show weakness or express their emotion. And at first, especially if you don't have a lot of water in your chart, if you have a Capricorn Moon, you might even be impatient with somebody who is an emotionally expressive person because that's not necessarily in your wiring. It's more of a learned skill. And so I found I've surrounded myself with a lot of watery friends to help me like realize it's human to have emotions. So Val, this is a great time for us to kick off our discussion because I can definitely tell you more about some of the things that have been very challenging with strong Capricorn in my chart. And do you want me to just list off a couple things?
And we can kind of see where we dive into.
That sounds great. So I think the biggest one, because the moon is tied into emotion, and I have the Capricorn moon, this sense of over responsibility. If someone else is upset immediately, I feel I should fix this. I'm not feeling upset. I'm in a position of strength. What can I must be the one that has to solve all these problems. And that's actually very stressful. And I've learned in my life that's not always welcomed. So, do you have some tips for this type of circular thinking?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's understanding. I mean, we spoke about this a little bit the other day, but I mean, if you, right now, I'm just going to ask everybody that's watching, just reflect on yourself for a moment. How open are you without asking for it when somebody tells you what you should do? Right? Oftentimes we're like, don't shit on me, and it doesn't feel good when it's uninvited. And so just keeping that in mind, and oftentimes if we're the ones that do it to other people, we get annoyed when other people do it to us. So it's really useful to pay attention to that when we start to shit on people. And and I think that also, when I think about taking responsibility for other people, there's two things that can happen. I think it can lend toward, first of all, going back to emotions, what you were just speaking about. I think what could happen is when there's that place of, well, I know what to do, and this is what we need to do, and this is what we should do, and this is what you need to do. There's almost a dismissive quality about someone's emotions or where they are. And so sometimes just getting curious is a useful, profound tool in the sense of just asking, like, okay, so tell me more about what you're experiencing. Tell me more about just help me understand a little bit where you are. And you can also get, clear and help the person, because when the person is in that emotional state and they feel out of control, again, even though you might know the best thing for them in that moment because you're seeing it beyond their chaos, if you will, yet at the same time they're not in the emotional state to hear the information through. And so you can, I mean, you have the space as Capricorn and the earth qualities, they're containers. They have the ability to hold that kind of container and that ground for people. And so I almost go, okay, so what if there was greater direction? Okay, I would love to hear you. Let's say you're a boss talking to an employee or, something like that, or somebody on your team. I'd love to hear more about where you're coming from and everything. So let's do this. Let's stick with facts first. And then let's go into what you're experiencing emotionally from that. And so it starts to show them and direct them toward the difference between the two. And I think that's really, really useful. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And I think people with Capricorn moon, or maybe Mars too, because Mars represents anger, right? So Mars and Capricorn, wanting to, just like establish the facts and not get swept up in the emotion part. And so I think that would really help a lot, and letting yourself off the hook, in a way that you realize you don't want to rob somebody else of the chance to do things for themselves. It's sort of invalidating to them, thinking they think,
Right.
oh, you don't think I'm capable, you know.
Well, exactly. Right. And that's the other thing, I recall when we were speaking the other day, I was recalling how, I think that there's a right way my mother should be living her life and she's not, and in my perception is the choices she's making is only perpetuating illness, physical, emotional, whatever it is. And so for the longest time, I thought there was a right way and I would try to shit on her, all the time when I was younger. And I finally just had a new thought one day. And that's how these insights come in. When we create a little stillness and spaciousness from our very convergent thinking, like this is how it has to be, right? We all of a sudden our aperture can open, right? So in that moment, I had a new thought. And the thought was, Valerie, who are you to play God? You know,
Whoa.
it's like in the sense of where, how do I know that my mother being exactly as she is not her precise curriculum for her soul's evolution? And like you said, we'd be robbing that person, or perhaps her pain and her going through whatever that she is going through is actually a contribution to other people around her because of what what people learn, what people discover. We're all on our own journeys and all on our own path. And I think sometimes, at least the Capricorn moons I know, when they get an integrator and imbalance, I definitely see that piece of there's a right way and I know the right way, and you got to do this and you should and you need to. And again, that only is going to create greater dissonance with the person, and it will most likely start to create toxicity within a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned some of this the harder way, but I think these tips could save people some time to maybe not have to always learn through a difficult experience. Once you have awareness of these energies, there's proactive things, and I really have tried to, yeah, like resist the urge to intervene unless somebody asks my opinion or help. Then that's what Capricorn's time to shine,
Oh,
because we're like, well, I have this, and what about that? Because they asked.
well,
um
the other thing, really quick, if I might just say, to adding to that, Steph,
yeah.
the other thing with that is that when somebody is going through something in front of you, whether again career and friendship, relationship, it doesn't matter, just simply even asking the question, hey, how can I support you right now? Do you want me to listen and give you suggestions, or do you just want me to listen and hold space for you? Because especially as a coach and a friend, I'm like, do you want me to put my coaching hat on or not? And I think that also is really useful because it gives that person the opportunity to decide. And then in addition to that, because every single person, I get this more and more, and I have a greater understanding, even though I cognitively have known this, it's a different thing when it starts to become visceral, in the sense of that everybody's a mirror for you. So in the moment of asking a question like what in my energy is calling this in right now? Because like you said, you surround yourself with friends that are water, people that have water in their sign. And that makes sense, because what it calls in for you is the potentially, instead of the resistance to it, the opportunity to cultivate in you, to cultivate compassion, to cultivate patience, and all these other skills that maybe you didn't come into this lifetime strong with, but you get to learn them.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that's a real thing with the elements in a chart, is we tend to magnetize people who have some of what we don't. And I think in ours, you have a lot of air in your chart. I also don't have a lot of air. I have a lot of earth. I don't think you have a lot of earth. So it makes for good collaborations for sure. Now, a couple other pitfalls potentially. I think of Capricorn so much with image, right? Because there's a kind of a thing of Caps wanting to appear successful, and that can really steer us off track to going after what we really want versus what we think would be impressive. It's weird, because I know logically that that doesn't make sense, but I caught myself doing that sometimes. And so, how do you help people with that?
I love this, and I actually see this a lot. And I actually have gone through this a lot with myself. And I don't have Capricorn, but I have things in my 10th sign, so my 10th house. But anyway, so I think a few things. First of all, getting curious and asking ourselves, why do I really want this? Why is this important for me? And giving ourselves that time and space to really sit with that answer and check in with it continuously, because our ego may be the one that says, I need to, I should. And then we're striving for something, or we're pushing through something, or we're making something happen in our lives, or directing toward a goal. And we never really actually experience the full satiate, like we're never fully satiated from it. But in addition to that, I'm a huge student of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I was just away with him for a week. And it was really fascinating, because you can take something like image in the sense of money and looking a certain way, and the money in your bank account or anything, but let's take it to self-worth. And self-worth and so loving myself, this has been my journey, my lifetime. And so I mean, a lot of people, if not everyone, but I think more than others. And so what was really interesting is that I saw even deeper in this deep internal inquiry, the ways in which that I would really, really still tap into the not really valuing myself, not really feeling worthy, not really feeling good enough. But the thing is that the way in which that I used to go about coming to that place of I am worthy, it just wasn't working anymore. That whether it's the money in my bank account, the way I look, the way how smiley I am in a day, if I'm in a good, whatever it is, right? How I'm performing in work, right? If I'm successful in my career. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, like that's not, and it was just this decision. It's almost like we kind of get to really sit with, does my soul wants to know she's deserving of love being me, just because I'm me, not because of what I do, what I have, the money in my bank account, or anything like that. And so I think giving ourselves that space and time to get really honest with ourselves whenever we're going towards something, and even checking in with when you start to go towards something that you think that you want, right? And I'm not saying you don't, but check in, is it a light or a tight energy? And if it's tight energy, and if there's crunchiness around it, and if there's a little bit of a pushing and everything like that, it might be a no in you. Yet the head is saying yes, right? But if it feels light and it feels good, doesn't mean that fear won't be there, because sometimes going for what we want also brings up that fear along with the excitement. But is it tight, or am I tight, or am I light? And that simple question, and then we get to kind of sit with it, massage it, and sit with it, massage it, and sit with it, massage it, and be patient with ourselves in discovering that, because that was another thing you said, impatience. So really letting that percolate and settle a little bit, which again, feelings, it's not necessarily, and tell me what you think about this. Like it's not about, it's not maybe the go-to to go to the feelings piece, but at the same time, that feeling, like the sensation and the feeling in our body might give us the greater cues. So when we learn to start connecting with ourselves in those ways as well, it could give us greater insight. And then we start going for something for the feeling, because that's really why we're going for anything anyway, is for the feeling. So we start to get more in touch with that feeling. We may realize, actually, that thing that I'm going for, I don't even need anymore, because I don't even want it. It's not even that important to me, and I want more of this,
That makes a lot of sense, and it was really reminding me of all the juicy themes for Venus retrograde in Capricorn, evaluating our self-worth and why we want what we want. So even if you don't have Capricorn in your chart, we are in a golden window of opportunity to make the most of examining the themes that you just described. But I really like that of tuning into my body and my feelings, because so many times it's almost as if I think, oh, well, this is going to be expected of me, and maybe I won't look like a hard worker or a good astrologer if I don't do this or that. And, the reason I went into astrology was to help people. If I just remember that focus, does it feel good? Is it helping people? That keeps me more on track than what will this look like to other people? Because you're never going to make everybody happy.
No, yeah, that's great. That's so great.
Yeah, so let's see. We probably have time maybe with one more talking point about emotions and how they're, I learned, it took me a really long time. Emotions are not supposed to make sense. I kept thinking, well, no, that's not right for me to be mad at that person. They actually just didn't do anything. And in some way it's true, I got to have compassion. But then, like, it's okay if I felt mad. I need to dig into that instead of trying to bury it like an embarrassing condition, you know? So I am super curious about judging your own emotions as well as judging other people's, because I do think that's shadow Capricorn material.
Okay, so the sense of judging your own emotions as well, not just other people for having their emotions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's remembering that we're whole beings, right? We're not just a mind, we're not just a body, we're feeling beings as well. And emotions are energy in motion. And it and oftentimes it's an opportunity to look at, okay, I'm uncomfortable right now. And in my discomfort, what is being asked to look at, right? Because the discomfort might be telling you something, but instead of brushing it or pushing through or making something happen or trying to, whatever, not feel it, to do anything to not feel it. So sometimes it's just simply asking, okay, why am I, what might this be, right? Why is it maybe showing up? So just that number one, for our own selves, and giving ourselves that permission again to pause and listen. I mean, I had to learn how to be with sensation. I had to learn to be with that, because I would analyze my emotions. Absolutely, 100% being so much shit.
Gemini moon.
Yeah, totally, right? And so
Hmm.
so learning to really give ourselves that permission to be the whole person and feel our feelings and recognize there's nothing to, just because it feels bad, we don't have to run from it. We don't have to, and it's really, really interesting too. I was speaking with a client yesterday, and she's in a place where she wants to make a decision before this big thing that she's doing for herself, to dive in to do some inner work. And she wants to spend the time alone, but it's the holiday, and she wants to go in inward and meditate and everything. She just started dating somebody, so she's really torn, right? So I'm going to kind of bring two things together with the Venus retrograde, by the way. Okay, so this is value and relationship, right, as well as emotion. Okay, and being with emotion, so I'll tie them both in. But essentially what happened is that she was going back and forth with teetering. I want to have time alone, but I really don't want to. I want to be with him, but I don't know, and I want to, I don't want to miss out. And what if it was going somewhere, and but I really need to be alone, and what it's, da, da, da. And I was just asking her questions, like, and it was so interesting because a few things, like, when she would talk about it. And that's the thing. So checking in and knowing our own selves and our energy. And that's why I love being a coach, because again, somebody's in their stuff. They don't realize it, right? So as she's talking to me, when she was talking about him and what she's thinking about going with him, I could feel her energy kind of scattered, and it was more in her head, and it was anxious, right? But then she starts talking about the excitement of being able to, for a week before she goes, really drop into her, meditate 3 times a day, honor herself, eat really clean, all this stuff. And she was solid in the way she was saying it. And I was like, are you clear about your energy right now? And just bringing awareness to her own body in that moment, in the sense of that, when was she going towards something because she thinks she should, and it's the right thing to do, and it's also the pressure of somewhat, the perceived pressure of somebody else wanting something from you, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to just pausing and honoring. And what was interesting is that two things. Here's the thing. When we take that quote unquote pressure, right, the external world wants us to look a certain way or do a certain thing or anything like that, and we internalize it, we make it us. What ultimately happens going to that Venus retrograde, to me, it's an opportunity to go, okay, where am I not valuing myself in this relationship? Where am I not valuing myself? And how am I, what would self-honor like right now? What would self-care, what would it feel like right now? How, and that's the whole thing of, like, even paying attention to ourselves when we speak about things. Are we more like and like tripping over things? Are we solid, and knowing the difference between those? But then here's the other thing. When she got solid in herself and she got clear, and then I asked her, I said, well, what are you afraid? Like, what are you afraid of? I think that was the question I asked her, in the sense of not being with him. And it was, she goes, it feels really good to be alone and take that time, but it scares me. It really scares me. And I was like, but first of all, have you done things that scared you and you did it anyway? You know what I mean? Feel the fear and do it anyway type of thing. Yeah. And you made it through. And also understanding the fear is not something to run from or push away or push down. Fear is often an opportunity if we allow it to be and if we really sit with it. And just because we feel fear or feel discomfort or feel anything like that, what we get to do is we get to watch for any patterns that are there, whether all of a sudden we busy ourselves or we push things or we make things, try to, whatever it is. But we get to instead sit with ourselves and start to welcome that fear, especially if we feel light about something else occurring. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And it's interesting because I think I might have omitted from my list that Capricorn rules fear. And so when you went into that piece, I'm like, of course. Yeah. A lot of times when there's Capricorn heavy astrology, it is about people facing their fears. And I can definitely relate, not same scenario of Christmas or something, but there's times where it's really better off for me to be alone. And the way I reconcile that as a Capricorn heavy person is I want to be my best self. And
Mm.
so I circle back to that quantity versus quality piece where if I spend a bunch of time with different people, but it's not quality, then I'm not going to feel good about the relationship because I'm not giving them my best self. And so if I'm a bit more hermity and then because Capricorn can be associated with the hermit and I feel refreshed and renewed, then I bring the best of me and have much better, stronger relationships as a result.
Beautiful. I love that. And the question that I would ask to anyone that sometimes sits there and asks that question, like, how can I bring the best of me? In the sense of like, well, best of yourself according to who, right? Because
Hmm.
if according to what we think that they want or we think that they're going to approve of, we might miss it and do it again out of trying to prove or that we're doing it right or good, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to the best according to me, in the sense, okay, so great question to ask is, okay, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be with the group of people? Who do I, well, okay, then what do I need in order to do that, right? And we can even go to the question of like, how do I want to feel right now? I want to feel X. Okay, well, who do I need to be feel X? Okay, great. Well, what would I need to do then, right?
Yes, yes, that's awesome. I really love how you bring it back to how you want to feel versus what to do. Because once you know how you want to feel, then you'll know more what to do, I think is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we're more aware of if our doing or if our wanting to be our best self is really coming from us and not coming from the idea of what we should do or be.
I love that, and I think that's a good suggestion for people setting their new moon intentions coming up January 2nd. Because we're in the retrograde, it's not as much of an action oriented time anyway. It might be a good time to set a few feelings based intentions. I would like to feel financially secure. That's pretty vague, but it's also very tangible, like how you want to feel as we get out of the retrogrades in February. It might become more clear to you, oh, I know some methods that might help me feel this way. Like, so I'm glad you brought that up because I think sometimes people think an intention setting has to be very specific. I need to get this job or this relationship. And it's not always that way. It's just, I want to feel valued. I want to feel attractive. That kind of thing is really fun to work with because then you can get into a space that doesn't hinge on specifics.
Right, totally. And one thing, and there's not enough time to go into it, but this is a huge part of my work with Dr. Joe, and that coming in, it's if we want to get oftentimes, especially if you're a go-getter and you're climbing up the mountain and Capricorn, it's like we're comfortable with things like pressure, we're comfortable with things like proving ourselves, we're comfortable with things like doing it right, you know what I mean, doing whatever. Yet getting more comfortable with feelings like softness, feelings like patience. And then let's take it a deeper level, like the things that you want, going back to the new moon, like getting comfortable with, like, how would I feel if I were financially free? How would I feel if I were in a relationship in love? And then letting ourselves get comfortable and feel those feelings, then we're become the frequency of it coming back to us, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's really great. And I feel like that's a really good one to leave people with. This has been such a good episode. I could be biased because you gave me some tips, but I think there's going to be a lot that people can mine out of this episode. We packed a lot into a half hour, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and we will be coming back in for the January, towards the end of January, with Aquarius themes. That'll be a whole new thing.
Hey, well, thank you. It's an honor. I love it. I love it. I have the best time. So
Oh,
happy holidays, everyone, for those of you that are watching this prior to the holiday, and let's kick off the 2022 with a massive bang of intention and tapping in.
yeah, that sounds wonderful. Well, we will see you next time. Thank you, everybody.